On today's podcast, I sit down with Patrick James. He is the head program and head coach of Gain at Marchon, one of the biggest online training communities for those who are getting after strength and hypertrophy. In this episode, we dive into the science behind how to get strong and how to build muscle, but we also dive into the challenges behind what goes into creating a really big online training program. So, if you are in the game of getting strong, building muscle, or you're a coach and you're interested in learning about what it takes to build an online program, follow along and listen to this episode. Patrick James, welcome back to the Process Podcast, my friend. How are you doing?
I'm good, Ted. How are you?
I'm also very good. Oh, this is just like old times, eh, my friend?
Except we're not sitting across from the table from each other anymore, or in the small physio room. Do you even have that physio room anymore?
We do have that physio room. It's no longer the podcast studio, but it is still there, yes.
Nice.
So I think context for listeners, Patrick used to be a member of Team Coastal and was an integral part of the Process podcast back in the day. And Pad, we used to do catch ups then in Pad where we'd have almost no agenda and we just talk about
Mm,
kind of what was happening in life at that point in time. I think a lot of that was recorded through the COVID times and post
mm,
COVID. So there was a lot happening in life and there was lots to reflect on. I think you and I were going through quite a reflective period in our lives. But since
mm.
then, you have moved overseas. You're in the UK. You're working for, and you have a pivotal role in, if not one of the biggest coaching organizations, certainly in the UK, but maybe even bigger than that. It's a company that I
Mm.
certainly look up to a lot. We've had Ollie Marchon on the podcast, as well as Jens, two of your kind of right hand men that you work with.
Yeah.
You are doing, some amazing work over there. So we're going to kind of treat this as a fresh new slate. Introducing you to the podcast. Paddy, who are you and what do you do?
Um, I am Paddy, and I am head coach at Marchon Victoria. So it is our most recent gym that we've opened. So we currently have 5 sites, and this is our most recent site, which is also our most central location in London. So I came on to Marchon to be the head coach of our first London site, which was over in East London, Stratford. That was when I left Coastal. Coastal was to join Marchon for that opportunity. So stepping into a head coach role, and spent 2.5 years building Marchon Stratford. And then it was, for about a year, it was on the cards to open Marchon Victoria. And when eventually we finished the build, etc., was then in June of this year that I then moved over to Marchon Victoria and have been head coach here. I also write our most popular online program on Marchon Training Online, which is the Gain program, which is our bodybuilding or functional bodybuilding hybrid program that we have. And I have some involvement with the PFCA, which is our an education company that Marchon co-own. So involved in seminars and education around that as well.
Paddy, when you look at Marchon like on social media, if you're not
Mm,
involved in the brand, it looks like there's just so much going on. And as a man who has definitely committed to many things within my professional career and felt like that I just don't know how to manage all this, um, I certainly look at it being like, how do these guys do it?
mm.
So I think if people ask you who is Marchon, like how do you answer that question?
Um, I think what we're trying to do is create a one-stop shop ecosystem for people within health and fitness to come into. So you have training, you have nutrition, you have supplements, you have apparel, you have in-person training within the gyms at multiple locations. So it's we talk about this a lot internally, but it's as many a march on touch point in as many people's lives as possible, whether that is taking the supplements, whether that is following a program online, whether that's training in the gym, wearing the t-shirt, wearing the socks, whatever. So or stepping into the fitness industry, or whatever it might be from the education perspective with the PFCA. So I think it's just us trying to create as strong an ecosystem for health and fitness as possible, and using our kind of mission to allow for people to live a life without limits, and everyone's identity of living a life without limits is their own. What a limit or no limit might look like for one person is very different to another. So I think we have so many sort of small businesses within the umbrella of Marchon that are all kind of all very small and very hands-on, and that allows for us to move quickly, allows for us to um, grow quickly, allows for us to innovate and change things. So that's what we're trying to do, just create this amazing ecosystem as best we can. And we have so many amazing 18 players across the business that Ollie and the team have an amazing eye for talent, and have a really good ability of getting people into a room and having a conversation with them, and not being afraid of grabbing opportunities by both hands. And yeah, that's what we're trying to do.
Love it. Talk me through Gain. Can you just remind me, was Gain already an online program before you joined, or were you a
No.
pivotal part of starting Gain?
Yeah, so it was my baby. So the how the sort of march on training, its sort of life cycle was PDFs and just but one-off PDFs that Ollie used to sell, and I think it was the initial PDF was called Functional Physiques.
Like
So
an
that was, say again.
like an ebook type thing.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, like an ebook PDF type thing. It was like a one-off payment, I'm pretty sure. And at the time, well, I mean, Ollie is already pretty shredded, but he was like bodybuilder lean, and was very much kind of looked like he could step on stage. So, but he also had a large background in rugby and S&C, so he was training like a bodybuilder but also training like an athlete. So he was doing power cleans and box jumps, and dipping his toe into wads and kettlebell swings and burpee box jumps, etc., whilst also doing a lot of bodybuilding. So it was this sort of aesthetics based identity, but also a functional element to it. And similar to Marcus Philly functional bodybuilding, kind of a sort of subsection of CrossFit. Not as many skills, a little bit more on the strength work, a little bit more on the bodybuilding, and very similar to the identity of Coastal, and what Coastal's identity and the process programming's identity of CrossFit was, is a lot more biased towards S&C than just straight CrossFit. And the functional physiques program was quite similar to that. So probably heavier on the bodybuilding than the other ones. That was how people then heard about March On, and then it kind of developed into this March On Performance and March On Perform program. There was just a one online program that was then done on WODUP and True Coach, etc. And then it started to grow and expand from there. And then they started to create sort of um, different types of programs that we had. So again, process, train, live, perform, compete. We had train, perform, compete. So those were kind of like newer to training, developing patterns and lower skill movement of S&C. Perform was then kind of functional fitness, which is what I would call like a poor man's CrossFit. So power cleans, toes to bar, without high skill gymnastics, without barbell cycling, without snatches. And then we had a compete program, which was a CrossFit program. So that was kind of the initial online program that we had as it developed. And then we started to add and layer in more programs into that. So we then added a women's program. We added a Compete Plus program. So that was then more competitive CrossFit, so double sessions. And then that was a High Rocks program as well. And this was then High Rocks was starting to take off as well. So we had a High Rocks, a Train, Perform, Compete Plus, and women's. And then after about sort of 6 months into my role at Stratford, obviously I had a big passion for just bodybuilding, biomechanics, and a lot of that passion came from learning from you when you went through N1, which is probably a bit of a buzzword in the industry now. But yeah, learning from N1, and we as a coaching team at Coastal, we went through a lot of biomechanics and a lot of understanding hypertrophy in a lot more detail than I'd ever done before. And I love being a bit of a nerd and trying to understand as much detail as I can. So I really latched onto that. And a large part of what I enjoy from a training perspective is being able to look good, look muscular, have lots of muscle, as well as being strong and being fit. So it was a big passion of mine, but also a large subset of people that I and we all work with, regardless of what a lot of their goals might be, there is a requirement to build muscle effectively on top of that, whether it's aesthetics based or whether it's performance based. So I think having deeper understandings of how to execute movements better, what's happening from a muscle level, what's happening from a biomechanics level, was something that I latched onto because I not only saw its potential success for me myself, but also as a coach. And the deeper I could understand that, the better I could coach, program, etc. So I really latched onto that N1 and the biomechanics, and then it kind of created this cascade of learning around hypertrophy that I really became and am still very, very passionate about. It's probably the thing that I enjoy learning the most about. Um, so then this was kind of the one area that we weren't really focusing on in our online program. And I had talked to Ollie about, like, look, this is my, not my niche, but like this is what I'm really passionate about, and I would love to start writing an online program. And I think that there's a real gap in the market with what our current offering is versus what we could be adding, and that would be some form of a monthly bodybuilding program. So it was then, do we do a PDF of functional physiques and a one-off ebook type thing, and it's a one-off program, or do we make it a monthly, add it to the monthly subscription? So we decided to add it to the monthly subscription, and we came up with Gain. I realized after coming up with the name Gain that it is also the name for OPEX. That wasn't, I hadn't ripped OPEX off. I just realized that, oh, in a line with everything else that we've created this single word identity. We lost focus then. Single word identity of what all these programs meant. So train, perform, compete, high rocks. So Gain, does what it says on the tin in terms of gaining muscle. So that started in January of 2022, I think it was. So it's coming up to 3 years now in January 2026. And the program has evolved a lot since then.
So good. Okay. I love that you kind of like pitched this idea to Ollie and the team and
Mm,
said, "Hey, listen, there's a gap. This is my passion. I think I can do this thing really well." And you did it. Now, when it comes to actually like you've got this concept that the bosses say, "Yeah, let's do it." Come up with a name. Where do you go next? Like, how do you start? How did you start thinking about, well, what is the actual training going to be? Is it going
mm,
to be, because I think the term bodybuilding can be delivered in many different ways, right? In terms of the
sure.
education. That's like Marcus fully went down this hybrid approach where he tried to still make athletes feel like they're doing something athletic, but the
Mm,
principles were based around time and attention, isolation, etc. Or you look at Chris Bumstead and the guys who compete in Olympia and what those guys are doing. Even that is
mm.
quite varied. Some guys are still pulling heavy squats, heavy deadlifts. Some are just, using primarily machines. So how did you then come up with, um, what the training program itself would actually look like? What are you gearing towards designing training cycles? Yeah, like let me in on that to talk me through how it all went down.
Yeah, so I think I did think a lot about what's the avatar, who are we trying to attract in this program? Where are we not serving the current community that we have? And we would often, people saying, I want to look better, but I also want to be a bit fitter, etc. We would often say, do the program or do the perform program. So then it was like, okay, who are these people that are saying that they want to do XYZ and we can better facilitate the goals that they have, but give them a little bit of what they're doing right now. So we were conscious that Marchon has an identity of elements of bodybuilding, elements of strength work, elements of mixed conditioning. And, so the way that Ollie and Chad would train back in the day would be like squat variations, deadlift variations, pressing variations, relatively heavy, bodybuilding accessories, and then they would usually do mixed conditioning all in the same session. So it'd be like ergs, dumbbells, kettlebells, etc. Now that's the train program and that's perform program really. So that's already catering what we do. So, I wanted to keep top end strength work in there, different variations and keep things exciting, adding in things like Zercher squats that people might not have done before, adding in different variations of presses, different like stiff leg deadlifts versus conventional deadlifts to give people variety, but also train absolute strength. I wanted there to be accurate bodybuilding based off of my understanding and passion for exercise execution, setups, biomechanics, etc. So I wanted that to be there. And then I really enjoy ripping ergs. I enjoy bike, ski, row, assault bike, intervals, and I've always loved that. And I probably have enjoyed that because I am above average compared to your average gym goer in those erg things. So you naturally lean into what I feel I'm more competent at. So I then created this identity where it's like some form of key lift or key lifts, uh, specific targeted bodybuilding exercises that wouldn't be too functional, that would be more bodybuilding-esque, and then mainly monostructural conditioning. So for listeners that don't know that, that would be just a bike or just a ski or just a row or just a run, or mixing those rather than adding in gymnastic elements, dumbbell elements, burpees, etc. So that was how we initially started. And I wanted to make some of the bodybuilding elements a little bit more functional. And the demographic that we were often working with would be one, it would be people that would be mainly people training in a pure gym. So over in the UK, pure gym's a massive chain, and it will usually have some form of a functional area. So they'll probably have kettlebell, assault bike, wall ball targets, sleds, etc. But they will also have pin and plate loaded machines, so things like leg extension, hamstring curl. So I thought about where's the vast majority of the people going to be doing this training. It needs to fit that gap of people that are going to have access to pin plate loaded machines, but also it needs to be able to be done in CrossFit gyms or functional style gyms where they might only have access to a cable stack or they might not have access to a cable stack. And that's where the program started. Now, as it's evolved over time, I've moved away from lots of different variations of top end strength work and now focus purely on squat, bench, and deadlift. And part of that is my own bias because I enjoy squat, bench, deadlift, not right now, but because it's not going well. But I enjoy squat, bench, deadlift, and a lot of people coming into our ecosystem care about what they back squat, care about what they bench press, care about what they deadlift. So I want to have a program that fills that for people. I've moved pretty much completely away from functional bodybuilding exercises. And the program, we still define it as functional bodybuilding, but more so that you're doing bodybuilding, but there are other functional elements around it rather than the bodybuilding accessories themselves are functional. So what I think about that is, a Marcus Filly might be doing a half kneeling kettlebell press. There'll be a bodybuilding stimulus, but there's a, functional element of bracing and, working through a different movement pattern. Whereas for us, it would be, okay, if you have access to it, I want you to do a behind the neck Smith machine overhead press, because that's going to target your front and mid delt better. And you'll have a fixed path of motion versus you doing a kettlebell press. You'll probably be able to create better mechanical tension from a stimulus to grow. So that's the premise there. And then from a conditioning, it's still very much cyclical, but with the running obsession, particularly in the UK, but everywhere in the world over the last, 5 years or so, there's a lot of running, and I always put a running option for people to work towards a 5K, a 10K, a half marathon. So it will be strength work, targeted bodybuilding accessories, running or biking intervals or erg intervals. And that's where the program is right now.
How many people you got in the program, Paddy?
So we're quite fluid with it, but we're at about 1,500.
Amazing. Team, I want to quickly interrupt this episode to give a little shout out to our sponsors today, Well Spent. This little journal has made such a massive, profound impact on my life since I started using it. When I started using it, I actually didn't know that it was backed by neuroscience, but now it totally makes sense. This has brought a ton of gratitude to my life. It keeps me on track and focused on the things I need to do day to day and brings a lot of context as to how each day fits within the greater week and the greater month. So if you, like me, really care about trying to be a high performer and want to do everything you can to make that happen, I cannot recommend this journal enough. Use our discount code, The Process, to grab yours today. So let's talk about the evolution. So okay, so you kind of like laid out a lot there in terms of like what the program is looking like now. I want to know like biggest changes since 2022, since you launched the program up until now.
Yeah.
Like
Mm.
looking back, what are some of the things that like you laugh at now, or you think, wow, like we just do it so differently to how we initially did it? I want to know about like the evolution of Gain.
Yeah, I think that probably from a straight top end strength perspective, I think a big part is the variation. So I would always the tests that we would always create KPIs as process have done for. I don't know if you still do that online.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean like foundation of test retest or something to work towards or progress over a training phase. And I always felt like I needed to create something a little bit different each time. So I didn't want there to be the monotony of it. So often would be doing some pretty weird tests.
For example.
We max effort bar hang, 5 RM Zercher squat,
Yeah.
Spotto press rep max, um, stiff leg deadlift rep
And can I
max.
ask, Paddy, was the variation driven out of the fear that people will get bored if they saw the same thing again?
I mean, it's a very apt question right now because it's a cycle that I will constantly battle with myself in when I write the program in the gyms, when I write the program for gain, as to novelty versus stimulus, and literally filmed a reel about it yesterday. So keep your eyes peeled for that, guys. Patrick_James_coach. um, Not Paddy Starfish 10 anymore. Yeah, so yeah, I think that trying to balance out that with the novelty and keeping people engaged versus what they need or what's going to get them results is a constant cyclical process of asking yourself, and you're trying to check yourself with what you're doing. And 100% there's a level of, you think about a program that you want to write because it's optimal, versus a program that's going to have better adherence because it's more enjoyable. You've got to take into account the writing of the program itself, but also its marketability and the business aspect to the program. There are people's salaries and livelihoods that depend on the success of the program. So you have to check yourself in terms of the biases that you're doing, and you could put your blinkers on and be like, no, we're doing it this way. But if it negatively impacts on the growth or the retention of members online, is almost a higher power that you have to answer to outside of just writing a great program or a program that you want to write. So lots of plates to spin just to think about that when writing a program that I'll constantly think about.
I think one of the challenging things for that type of program is, okay, when we think about CrossFit, it's easy because people who gravitate to a CrossFit program, they know exactly what they're signing up for. It's not that easy
Mm,
because CrossFit can be delivered in so many different ways. The process program have always had our way of doing it, which is a little bit more catering towards longevity and not just smashing people up. And there are principles that go into our program that allow that to happen. And then, you do a powerlifting program and you know what you're signing up for. You're signing up for squatting, benching, and deadlifting, and probably some accessories to make those three things better. You sign up to Olympic lifting program, you know exactly what you're signing up for. Variations of snatch, clean and jerk. And I think this is when you enter the space of gain, which isn't just a bodybuilding program, and it's not just a strength program. I can understand the challenge, you know, because we have build as well, and it is challenging. It's like, well, what really are we, and what are the things that we are creating? You know, what? How would one know if they've been successful after following our program? In CrossFit, it's easy. Like, you're going to do the CrossFit Open, and you're probably going to see improved metrics and all the most important things. Powerlifting, hopefully, you're going to, you know, PR your squat, bench, and dead. So I can 100% envision, and I've obviously experienced it as well, how it is challenging because the stimulus, you know, the programming that you write ultimately needs to be delivering on the promise that we make. And the promise that we make is ultimately why people come to us in the first place. And so
Yeah.
when there's disconnect between,
Results. Yeah.
yeah, what people are receiving versus what they thought they were going to receive is often when people will drop out. So what are your thoughts on that?
100%. And over the last couple of months, we've changed kind of how a big part is of improving our success as an online business is bringing people, not so much acquiring people, but their sort of initial 7 days, and then what their following 7 days look like after that. If they've so we've got a 7 day free trial, which you guys have as well. And then is it your 7 days? Yeah,
Yeah,
14.
seven.
7. Yeah. So we have a welcome workout for each program. So that's a big part of getting people to have a taste of what they would experience. So seeing in the flesh what the program looks like. Obviously, they have a 7 day free trial, so they have access to everything. But we've kind of put each of the programs into buckets. So you've got aesthetics and you've got performance, and obviously gain fills into aesthetics pathway. So you kind of have a clearer idea as to what's the premise and what's the result that you're ultimately looking for with each program. So gain falling into an aesthetics subset means that ultimately, yes, we're trying to get you stronger, we're trying to get you fitter, but the priority is for you to change your aesthetics. So that's got to be the priority from a uh, results perspective for people. And when I'm thinking about balancing everything else, I usually focus on bodybuilding volume first, and then go through my strength work, and then go through my conditioning on top of that. Because ultimately is, there are many definitions of what a hybrid program is, but the gain is a hybrid program, and people are expecting to see improvements in their strength, in their conditioning, and in their muscle mass, which I definitely think is 100% possible. And obviously it depends on training age, etc. But that it doing that, but ultimately the aesthetics are the priority. So filtering out or bucketing when people come into the ecosystem, they can see those clear definitions of the program, just gives people a bit more clarity and expectation as to what that program is going to work towards.
Got it. Training cycle length. What did you land on? And does it change, or does it stay pretty much the same all the time?
So we have recently changed to all monthly subscription programs are all 10 weeks. So 8 weeks, every coach has the kind of freedom to do what they want with that. But I do 8 weeks of progression, a week of testing, and then a deload week, and then a new cycle starts. Now we've done that for a couple of reasons, but the main one being ease of marketing, whilst also giving people the program length that they want, train and perform. And women's often did 12-week programs. I usually did 10 because I felt that with bodybuilding, people got quite bored of the accessories after that time. And High Rocks was always working towards specific race dates. So we'd be like, okay, we're going to peak you towards Birmingham, for example. So then there would be, it might be a 16-week, 8-week accumulation, 8-week intensification, etc. So we've landed on 10 weeks. I think that's the right amount of time where we can slowly ramp up intensity on key lifts of squat, bench, deadlift. It gives nice, clear progressions working towards a certain metric of running or cycling, for example, and gives people a decent amount of time dialing in movement quality on a bodybuilding exercise that they're doing. What I have now done as well on this training phase is, going off of your last question, is on week 5, so halfway through the progressions, they have the choice of changing their accessories. So the target muscle will still be the same, but the accessory will change. Now, I won't be doing that myself, and I advise people not to, but we put out a lot of information. Oh, sorry, we asked a lot of questions and got a lot of information back. And there was quite a lot of people talking about how they liked in the past where I had changed accessories every 4 weeks for variety and novelty. And I've put a lot of education out between now and then around why keeping your exercises the same is probably going to be more beneficial from a results perspective. But if you're someone that is easily disengaged with your program, then having that novelty allows you to re-engage, then that's probably going to be better. So giving people the option to change accessories is something that we've changed. So it's 10 weeks long, accessories change every 4, the KPIs will linearly progress over that time towards testing phase, as will the conditioning.
Okay, let's define what you mean by accessories. So what I'm assuming you're meaning here is that you have like the main testing priorities, the main things that you're prepping towards. I assume those things don't really change. They're just linearly progressed over the 10 weeks. But then it's basically everything else that's not a priority. Does that fall into the accessories bucket?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just bodybuilding. So
So it might be
it's
it might be pecs on Monday. And so
yeah,
that pec exercise might vary every, well, like you said, you give them an option after 5 weeks to change it up.
yeah, yeah. So we do 3 full body splits, and I try and hit as many of the muscle groups as I can, 3 times a week. But if not, their frequency will be twice a week. So it will be, they'll do typically squat focused on a Monday, bench focused on a Wednesday, and deadlift focused on a Friday. They'll have a easy conditioning session on a Tuesday, and they'll have an interval conditioning session on a Saturday. So um, squat focused, and then full body accessories or full body bodybuilding exercises. So we might be doing pec and lat accessory or exercise. We'll then do a bicep tricep. We'll do a quad hamstring, for example, and then similar muscle groups on a Wednesday, similar muscle groups on a Friday.
Love it. Um, okay, question for you. How do you, because 10 weeks is quite a long time. I can
Yeah.
see myself as well, like, okay, right, we've got, I think with the big lifts, I can easily progress that over 10 weeks. But I do know a key component of me being able to progress for 10 weeks is going to be making sure that I don't peak too early.
Mm,
So, like, what has been the biggest challenge for you as a programmer? Especially, you're not just programming for one person, you're programming for 1,500 people, right?
yeah.
Basically, what tools have you implemented to help people be successful over a 10-week period? So let's quickly talk about the things that the traps that people often fall into with longer training cycles, with less
Yeah.
variation, is that, they're maxing out whatever the rep scheme is after a few weeks. They're not able to
Mm,
progress load, not able to progress reps, potentially technique starts getting sloppy now because they're doing anything they can to try and complete the rep to progress it. And then potentially injuries, burnout, that all can all happen when those things start to kind of come into play. So I guess 2 questions. Number one, have you experienced that? Did you see that happening with these longer cycles with progressive overload? And then number two, how have you helped people not fall into those traps and actually get, see 10 weeks of progression?
yeah. Before doing the 10-week training phase consistently, I would vary it up quite a bit based off of the KPIs that I had chosen, etc., etc. So, like, there were times where I had done a 16-week AB template. I'd done an 8-week phase. I'd done 6 weeks with a deload after 6. Was just kind of like playing around with it and seeing what stuck and what people enjoyed. And I know for me, probably about week 6, week 7 is where I'm at my peak. So I will often bring my RPEs up towards like 9 and 10 on week 6 or week 7, because I know by week 9 I'm pretty rinsed and I need to chill out. So, but I think for a lot of people, the majority of people have a lower training age than I do, so that are on the program. And I think the way that I would describe gain is, or the general avatar is, people who are probably in a pure gym or an anytime fitness or something like that. They have had some exposure to deadlifting or back squatting, but they haven't done a powerlifting program before. So those skills are still relatively new, so they can get quite a lot of progression with good programming. Um, and they have probably done like a Bumstead push pull legs twice a week sort of thing in the past and have done some bodybuilding, so have an understanding. So that's kind of the demographic. I think that for a lot of for that sort of avatar, they can continue to progress through 8 to 10 weeks of progressions and not feel too fatigued by the end of it, because most of the time their top end strength isn't at a point where they're creating a savage amounts of fatigue. Um, what I have done is two main things that I've implemented. I'll say three actually. So one is RP prescriptions. So I bring my RP prescriptions down to 6, 7, 8 in the early parts of the training phase, and then bring those RP prescriptions up. My the bodybuilding volume is significantly lower now than it was at the start of the program. And I am one of those people in the quotations low volume cult. And I haven't been convinced otherwise yet that that it's not as good as that it's I think that low volume is better for training in general with the right intensity. And that also helps with fatigue management for people to progress key lifts and conditioning. And then the other thing that I've done is full body splits. So we used to do upper lower full body, and I think that I personally, at the end of that lower body session, my legs were absolute toast.
And your
And
nervous
then
system just
and
smoked.
my nervous system, yeah. And then by after doing an interval session the day after that, was just rinsed. Then the other thing that I've changed as well is now the interval session is on a Saturday and the easy session is on a Tuesday. So they'll do squat focused full body on a Monday, easy conditioning on a Tuesday. So the idea is that they're not creating too much fatigue, using different types of muscle fibers that they would be on from the heavy squat session, particularly on the lower body. Wednesday is then lifting again, upper body focused. Thursday, complete rest. Friday, full body focused with the deadlift. And then Saturday would be the interval. So there's an element of, yes, they might get to that Saturday session and do the interval session and not necessarily be able to express the fitness as best they could because there's a bit of fatigue from the training week. But based off of what the intentions or the goals are for the program, and the priority is aesthetics and building muscle over the other two, but we still want to improve those. Putting the interval session almost like just gritting through that, then knowing that you've got a full rest day on a Sunday is better, I think, in terms of results to managing that fatigue.
I love it. It's like a perfect illustration of how programming is often just like a jigsaw puzzle, isn't it? It's like
Yeah,
the pieces are actually the amount of volume and intensity is actually the same as it was when you had them stacked on an upper, lower, and a full body day. You just spread the fatigue a bit more evenly over the week so that people don't have like these days where they're totally beat down and they have these other days where they feel like maybe haven't done much,
yeah,
which I think is works for like 99% of the world. I think just on
yeah,
on the volume part, I very much agree with you. Um, in terms of, I think what you're saying, Paddy, is that you're kind of more on the bandwagon of, generally speaking, probably people need less volume than they think to get
yeah,
gains within strength and hypertrophy. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
I definitely agree with that. I do think though, there obviously comes a time with the law of adaptation that at some point something has to be progressed. But which means like, you know, then maybe the frequency of sessions of a body part might double or triple within a week. But what I like, what you said, I think that's really good here, that I think coaches who are listening really need to take away, is that you've got clarity on the people that you're serving, right?
Mm,
And the people that you're serving is, you know, people generally speaking, younger training ages, a little bit newer to training. Like, you don't need to worry about someone like yourself, maybe myself, who, if we followed Gain, you know, we're going to be running into different issues by week 6, 7, 8 than the
mm,
vast majority of the people that are following the program. But I'd probably say that you know, with your high level of self-awareness and having done this for a long time, you also know how to make those small changes as you're getting into the deeper weeks of a program to allow you to still finish off 10 weeks and probably still make progress that
mm.
vast majority of people with lower training ages wouldn't really know about. They wouldn't have that self-awareness because they haven't kind of been through multiple iterations of fucking it up, so to speak.
Put themselves in the bin,
Exactly.
which we've done many a time.
Oh, we still do it, my friend. We still do it. Paddy, I want to talk about shift gears now to kind of like the strength and science of hypertrophy. Sorry, not the
Mm,
strength and science, the science of strength and hypertrophy. Because I think you've been putting out some really good content recently. By the way,
thanks.
I just saw you're at 10K followers.
Thank you.
Where was a celebratory 10K post thanking all your fans?
Uh, don't know. I felt awkward doing it.
Better late than never.
Um,
You can do one next week.
but I
Congratulations.
was, thank you. I was very pleased about it, and I'm also pleased that it was done over a slow, gradual process of just putting out good quality education and not kind of selling my soul too much to trending audios and clickbait. Because you know what, that's often what happens on Instagram is one reel gets picked up that was trending audio or that was a bit more clickbait, and suddenly there's loads of followers when actually what and you're exactly the same, is that it's a platform for us to be able to help people and educate and connect with other coaches and athletes and people that want to be diligent with their health and fitness. And the engagement that I get, the conversations that I have tells me that I did the right thing rather than leaning into trending audios and just trying to get more followers. So
Yeah.
thanks.
It's been really good to watch. Well done, buddy. You deserve it. Okay, so you have been putting out quite a bit of content recently, just talking about, yeah, just like, you know, what has to take place in order for us to make gains in hypertrophy, so building muscle mass and
Yeah.
also strength. So break that down, like in the most simplest terms possible, 10-year-old language. What are the non-negotiables when it comes to developing strength and hypertrophy? I don't know if you want to group them together or if you want to split them into two separate answers.
Yeah, I think that it's very I'm pretty confident it's impossible for us to get bigger hypertrophy without getting stronger, but it is possible for us to get stronger without getting bigger. So I would separate those two. So from a hypertrophy perspective of us increasing the size of our muscles, there needs to be activity. Why are you laughing?
I'm laughing at how hard you're trying to explain this to
Trying to make
people.
it. Yeah, I took it really literally.
Good.
Yeah,
Keep it going.
we'll
Like it.
keep it simple. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there needs to be tension on a muscle. The muscle first needs to be it needs to be active. So um, there needs to be tension on the muscle and it needs to be active. And
What do you mean it needs to be active?
so signals from the brain going down into the muscle to say, "Hey, let's contract
Yeah.
and um, lift or do said task that you're asking us to do." So then the muscle needs to be active. There needs to be a certain amount of tension, and as we progress through training, the tension and the activity needs to increase in order for us to continue to progress over time. So there needs to be an element of quotations progressive overload for us to continue to see growth. So activity, tension on the muscle, and ultimately intensity that where we're increasing what we've done over time from previously would be from a muscle building perspective.
Well done. I love the simplicity of that. Okay, now you mentioned intensity. How much intensity? Like how hard do we need to push to actually build muscle?
Yeah, again, from a sort of 10-year-old explanation is when you are new to training, you can probably get away with not having that higher intensity and still see great progress. But as your training age starts to develop, the speed of your reps need to start to slow down involuntarily. So rather than you thinking, I need to curl this weight slowly, the weight is moves slowly on the way up because it's heavy or because it's hard.
So what you're saying there is that it's an indication that you're training hard enough is when we're starting to see that object or that movement, whatever it is,
Yeah.
starting to involuntarily slow. You're still trying to move as fast as you can, but the speed it takes to get from A to B is actually now slowing down. So like one of those reps, is that enough? Or do we want to see multiple repetitions in succession?
Yeah. So I think the general rule is roughly around 5 reps away from what we would see as task failure is where you want to be. That would be the quotation stimulating reps that you would get from for you to build muscle. The reason why the reps prior to those 5 reps away from failure and 4 and 3 and 2 and 1 is because of the type of muscle fibers that you would be using or recruiting. And again, using that training age example, the older we are in terms of training age, not in terms of actual age, but the more experienced we are in the gym, the the more we need to use those types of muscle fibers that are active when we start training heavy or when those rep speeds really start to slow down involuntarily.
Love it. Okay, so I think you just done a bloody good job of breaking down what we need to do to actually grow muscle. Of like nutrition. Give me like a 10-second answer. Like we've just talked about training. If we just did all those rules, and we
Mm.
just didn't do anything with our nutrition, would we still gain muscle?
No, I mean you would probably still it depends where your level of nutrition was at. If you were eating absolutely zero, then you're most definitely going to be not progressing much. But you know, assuming that someone's eating a standard diet, the newer that they are to training, people can still build muscle when they're not eating enough calories to meet the demands of what they're doing. So if they're in a calorie deficit, they can still build muscle if they're newer to training. As the training age increases, it's a lot harder for people to build muscle when they're in a deficit. So, in order for us to give our body the best conditions to increase the size of its muscle, we need to be eating ideally at maintenance. Some people might say in a slight surplus so that we aren't eating below maintenance, but we don't really, and this is a hot topic, we don't need to be in an excessive surplus or really in any surplus for us to be able to gain muscle because it's all part of our basal metabolic rate for our body to repair tissue, etc. So making sure that we get some protein and we get enough calories to support our basic needs would put us in a good position for us to continue to build size.
Love it. Love it. Okay, let's talk about strength. I love the that you discerned the two differences, right? Arguably, to gain muscle, you probably have to get stronger, but you do not
Mm,
necessarily have to build muscle to gain strength. So let's break down strength now.
yeah. So strength is multifaceted. I think that what a lot of people forget about with strength is how neural it is. So what I mean by that is how much the brain, the central nervous system, has an impact on your ability to express strength, whether that is when you're very new to training or whether that's when you're trying to peak or express top end strength. Um, so we could have all of the muscle mass that is required for us to be able to lift said weight. But if neurally we haven't developed those pathways, we have fatigue that is present, it's going to be very difficult for us to do the task that we want to complete. So um, ultimately, we need to have muscle mass and we need to continue to build muscle if we want to get stronger in most cases. But it is possible for us to get stronger without building muscle. And like I said, that primarily will come through neurally, whether that is you finding a more efficient way to complete the task, and your body will do an amazing. Your body is amazing at doing that. Whether that is you're cheating the rep, or whether that's that your body gets better at recruiting more muscle fibers, or whether your brain learns the pathway better. This motor learning stage is a big part of people being able to improve their strength, because their body is more comfortable with what they're doing. And then when you talk about on the other side, when people are right at the very end of the learning stage and they're talking about top end strength, making sure that our central nervous system is rested and recovered will have a large impact on our ability to express strength at the top end, as much as our central nervous system understanding what we want to do, and our brain understanding what our body wants to do at the very early stages as well.
Nice. Okay, I love that. I think there's two things I want us to break down real quick. You mentioned motor control quite a bit. You're
Mm.
speaking to a very smart 10-year-old now here, Patrick. But I
Sorry.
think what we're really saying here is that a lot of quote unquote strength training, we are doing movements that the body probably up before stepping into a gym has never done before. So
Mm,
the brain is trying to coordinate our muscles and our joints, and everything to work together to be able to move object from A to B back to A.
mm,
And that process takes time, right? And so I think a limiter for a lot of early people who are, sorry, low training age individuals is that, the strength might actually be there in the tissue, just we don't have an ability to express it because our body hasn't learned how to coordinate, everything together to be able to do the thing. So if we can get better
mm.
at that, we're gonna already see gains and improvements in strength. And I think the second piece on the nervous system, I think for what probably the example we were talking about earlier, right? We're doing this program, we're 6 weeks in, we're progressively overloading it every week. We're seeing our numbers, we're able to add a kilogram to our bench press every single week. And I think people, when they're experiencing that, they think, like, this is easy. If I could just add a kilogram to the bar for the next 10 years, I'm going to be bench pressing 1,000 kilograms by, age 50. But then where
Mm.
we often run into is kind of we get to that point of week 7, week 8, and then now fatigue is starting to creep in because we've just been pushing ourselves so hard. And then
Yeah,
suddenly you can't put another kilo on the bar. And in fact, you're putting 10 kg less on the bar, from what you'd be doing. I think that's where a lot of people start panicking and thinking the program's not working, need to change it up.
yeah. Without going into too much of a rabbit hole, I think that a lot of that learning stage is why I like to not change exercises, because even with a simple exercise that is has a very fixed path, there is still an element of understanding that movement and
Yeah.
your body understanding how to express or do the movement that you're asking it to do, and that might take a few weeks. So if you're constantly changing exercises, you're going to struggle to you're always going to be in the learning stage rather than the stimulus or the expression phase.
I love that. And again, for your demographic, where you're, coaching a lot of people earlier on in their training journeys, that makes total sense to not be changing it
Mm,
all that often.
mm,
Okay. Let's talk about younger Patrick, because I know that building muscle has been a part of you and your life from, very early days, playing rugby, university, blah blah blah. Let's look back at some of the things that younger Paddy did, and what are some of the things that you're looking back now just make you cringe? You're like, oh, I can't believe I did that. What are some of those principles?
from a muscle building perspective, or
From a
just
muscle.
generally?
We can go muscle or strength building. Given that
Or just generally.
you've just outlined, no, generally is going to turn into, a 3 hour long podcast. We're going to keep this on strength and hypertrophy. What are some things looking back that you kind of laugh at? Things that you thought would be effective protocols for building muscle and strength.
um I think I wouldn't say I laugh at it, but I do think that these sort of intensifiers are like what I mean by that is things like excessive drop sets, or um just trying to almost create as much damage to the muscle as possible, and thinking that if I can't walk for a week, I did a good job of creating a great stimulus. Things like German volume training. Absolutely put myself in the bin on that. Couldn't walk for a week, thinking that I'd created an amazing stimulus to build muscle and get stronger. Um, Doing excessive drop sets on biceps and triceps and getting this absolutely savage pump, thinking that that was um, that was better than me just doing 2 to 3 sets of good quality bicep curls. And I think from a strength perspective, being in a hurry is something that I was when I first started doing CrossFit and I properly started squatting regularly. Was I was in a real hurry to try and get strong,
Mm.
and I was doing back to back Smolov, back to back Smolov. I would do a Smolov back squat. So people that don't know, Smolov was a Russian strength coach, had a very aggressive squat program that was designed for Russian weightlifters on plenty of performance enhancing supplements. And I was at university eating a paleo diet and doing 3 workouts a day on top of their aggressive squat cycle. So that uh, only ended one way for my connective tissue of my knees. And stuff like that. So I'd say things like intensifiers and excessive drop sets, always chasing the pump, um, doing crazy amounts of volume and crazy amounts of intensity.
Yeah, I can resonate with all those things. I think the first one, like DOMS, is a big one. Using DOMS as an indicator of like a successful workout. Actually,
Yeah.
speaking of which, right now I have the most ridiculous DOMS in my adductors. So when
What
we
do you do?
we were in
Copenhagen's.
Shanghai, we were in Shanghai. No, I do Copenhagen's a lot. So we were in Shanghai and at competition. I wasn't competing, so I had like a 45-minute window before breakfast, straight out of bed, go to the hotel gym and try and just get a session in. And they had an adductor machine. So AD
Mm,
adduction, right? We're pulling the
mm,
knees towards each other. And I was like, oh, you know what? I haven't been on one of these in like ages. And I don't think I've ever like properly given it a go to
mm.
see, because I'm always afraid that
Savage.
like I'm gonna tear something off the bone. So I went
Yeah.
like quite conservative. And I said, all right, I'm just gonna do 2 sets. And I hit 2 sets, and I'm gonna do my first set probably like 5 or 6 away from failure, just to like feel it out. And then really I'm just going to hit one tough set, and I'm just going to like, and I ended up because I was quite, because you're in a very vulnerable position with that machine, especially like when you're like at your end range. And
Yeah.
I'm always, and I couldn't even get into the machine. I might literally have to like use 2 hands to get my leg into position. And so then I started repping them out, and I kind of get into like rep 20, and I'm thinking, feel like I could still keep on going here, but I think I should probably call it a day because I haven't done anything like this. That was on Sunday. It's now Thursday, and my adductors are still in pieces. Like, I was genuinely trying to sleep last night, thinking I think I might have actually ruptured something in my
Torn your adductor off the bone.
area. Yeah, like it's
Very
crazy.
good.
But again, like novel stimulus. So like, not a good example there. Haven't done that movement in years, and then suddenly jumping on and thinking it's a good idea to take, even if it's just 1 set close to failure. And the result is now 5 days of a lot of pain. Now, that's not to say that it's not effective. It's just that I'm now asking a lot of my body to try and recover from that. Right. And that's
Mm,
the thing. When you've got immense DOMs, is that your body's gonna have to work even harder to try and recover and replenish this area. And you've also got all this other shit happening in your body at the same time. So essentially, your body's having to allocate all these resources to my adductors right now. And that's also meant that I haven't really had a good training session since then. I haven't been able to squat. Like, I haven't really been able to do any lower body stuff because the adductors are too sore. So the knock-on effect of my week has actually been pretty bad. And I think also my nervous system is now, because there's so much pain in one area, is having to work overtime. So
mm.
now I'm feeling mentally foggy, don't have the energy to do anything else, just from potentially, 1 set of whatever those things are called, taking
Yeah.
too far. So
Yeah.
I definitely agree with the DOMS thing.
Yeah. I mean, from a from a fatigue perspective, from a DOMS perspective, it's when we talk about muscle damage, the analogy I like to talk about is like, imagine denting a can versus crushing a can. So we can build muscle and we can build muscle without the presence of muscle damage. So we know that it's not a driver for growth. So when we have excessive muscle damage, there's only a finite amount of protein synthesis that we have. So if you create loads of muscle damage, all that protein synthesis is going to go to repair rather than to growth. So imagine denting a can with with an effective stimulus that allows for you to repair the can and then create another layer of aluminium over the top of it, versus you crushing the can and all that resource goes back to trying to get the can back to where it was before. And that's another reason why I advocate for the low volume so much, is that yeah, there are probably times where you could ramp up your volume a little bit more and lean into one or two muscle groups to drive that growth. But at the same time, you go too far the other way, and it has a knock-on effect on a lot of things, as you just talked about.
Yeah, love it. Okay, Paddy, right now you are still training pretty hard. It looks like it anyway. But you have just signed up to an Ironman in a year. You have already completed one Ironman, which is unbelievably impressive.
Thank
And
you.
you signed up to your second one. So I want, rather than digging into details of why you've done that,
Mm.
but what does your training look like now? Like, are you still, is your goal to, yeah, what is your goal? I won't put words in your mouth.
Yeah, so I actually signed up to this Ironman the week after I finished my last one.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, so was still on a high from it after, I crossed the finish line and was like, that's the hardest I've ever pushed in my life. I will never do that again. 10 minutes later was like, I could do that again.
It's like a movement
Um
workout.
yeah. Yeah. I literally cried when I crossed the finish line. Was just like I'd been battling demons for the last 20K of the run. Anyway, the you get early access to buy your ticket for the next year the week before they go out to everyone else, and my best mate was like, I'm gonna do it, and I was like, all right, fuck it, I'll do it. So we did it, and it was going to be this September just gone, but it was at the same time that Victoria was opening, and I knew that I wouldn't have any of the time to be able to put it into training, put into training what I wanted to, and open Victoria. And I do care and cared a lot about Victoria being successful and having a great launch. So I deferred it. So it is now 11 months away, just under 11 months away now, and I've just 2 weeks ago hired a triathlon coach, which I didn't do before. So I just bought a 5-month PDF, because it was the first time. I was like, I don't really need to have too much individualization. I just need to accumulate time on my feet, in the pool, on the bike, and I'll do a good job. So I've hired a triathlon coach. She has given me, right now we're starting nice and easy, and I did say to her as well, I was like, I don't want to, and I can't go ham sandwich straight away, because I'll get 6 months in and I'll be bored and sick of it. So I think we need an easy build. And she was like, I completely agree. I would be doing this regardless of if you said you wanted to push it now or not. So it was, that said good things to me about her coaching. So we're doing one bike, one swim, one run a week programmed, and I'm doing 3 strength sessions right now. But I will take 3 strength sessions down to 2, probably in the new year, maybe like January, February, March time, and then give myself a good 6 months of 2 full body sessions, and then the volume will start to ramp up for Ironman training. So the goal is so I did 12:39 on my Ironman course. It's, for context, it's Ironman Wales, and it is one of, if not the hardest Ironman course on the Ironman agenda. So it is a sea swim, which means that there's lots of currents and stuff going on. It's 2,500 meters of elevation on the bike. So it's a lot of hills, which obviously takes a lot out of your legs. And then I think it's an 800-meter or 600-meter elevation marathon. So it's not a flat marathon either. So it's a 10K loop 4 times, and the first 5K is uphill. And then the second 5K is downhill, which is all terrible for your legs, because your quads start cramping on the way down with all the braking forces. So yeah, I did 12:39 and I wanted sub 13 when I did it. So I was really happy with that to get 12 something. And my goal is to get 11 something this year, which I think is possible. Obviously, a lot of it depends on conditions, but the goal is to do a sub 12. Why I've got that goal, I have no idea. Ego, doing something hard, pushing myself. I also I love being out on the bike. I hate swimming, but I love cycling. It's taken over my personality, embarrassingly. And I don't mind running. So yeah.
What about the strength side of things? Like, do you have any goals that are linked to maintaining certain strength levels? What will your strength training look like? Let's actually talk a little bit more when you drop down to 2 sessions. If you only got 2 sessions a week, what are the key ingredients that you're going to be looking to maintain relative to whatever goals you have within the strength department?
Yeah, being completely honest, my top end strength is actually I'm really struggling at the moment. And I think that's partly because I'm still working quite a lot. So there's a lot of hours spent not recovering and chilling out, which definitely impacts recovery generally. Um, Obviously, I've increased my endurance training, which isn't conducive to expressing top end strength. And I'm also, obviously comparing myself to previous numbers that I've done in the past. When I've been my strongest, I've also been my fattest. So, I've been like 80, 98, 99 kilos when I've had my best squat, bench, and deadlift lifts. And right now I'm like 91. So way off, which does make a big difference for most people, but definitely makes a big difference for me in terms of my top end strength. So what I initially had thought to myself was that I was going to continue to squat, bench, deadlift top end over the training phase. I have got a goal that I would like to achieve in my lifetime, whether it's possible or probable, I'm not sure, but it would be to do a sub 12 Ironman and a 1,200 pounds total on the same day. So that would be a 185 back squat, a 135 bench, and a 220 deadlift, all of which I have done in the past, but at 98, 99 kg. So um in the middle of an Ironman prep, being very fit at the same time as trying to be top end strength is incredibly challenging. So, um, it's a lofty goal, but that's potentially what I would like to do at some point in the future. But the priority is to first tick off a sub 12 Ironman on a hard course. So my thought process is if I do a punchy um Ironman and do it in sub 12, I know that if I do a flat course and an easier swim and a flat marathon, I will be able to shave a lot of time off of that, or be able to hit a sub 12 without necessarily having to be as fit and put as much Ironman volume that I had done to do this one that's coming up in September. But going into the strength for this training phase, I had initially said to myself that I was going to squat and on one day and deadlift and bench on another day. Now, I'm leaning towards not doing that now and moving towards more like a better quality S&C programming for it, or doing more targeted bodybuilding exercises that will give me a little bit more stability, that I won't require me to be as like neurally primed to express those top end strength numbers or to try to hang on to them. So using things like leg press, hack squat, pendulum squat to create a really good stimulus that's not going to tax me too much if I manage my volume and my intensity, whilst maintaining as much muscle mass and strength as I can, and know that when my overall fatigue comes down and I'm rested from an Ironman and my weight starts to come up a bit, I should be not very far away from being able to get close back to those numbers. So that's where I'm leaning towards right now, to do two full body strength sessions, and for them to be quite bodybuilding focused with low volume rather than doing squat, bench, deadlift.
So, Paddy,
Coincidentally,
can I ask
yeah,
real
go,
quick? Can
yeah.
I just ask? So, when you look at top Ironmen and women, most of
Mm.
them aren't 91 kg.
Oh no.
And we know that we're like, the endurance events, especially, if we get into like the kind of ultra events, we're talking, very small frames.
Mm.
So what's stopping you from going down the route of becoming like a 60 kg paddy so you could, 100% break the 12, maybe 11-hour barrier? So like how much is like your body image and the way you look still an important part of this whole journey?
Yeah, massive part. I think that's a large part, a massive part of it is almost to be the opposite demographic to what is successful in the sport. Um, to to run around the Ironman course and to be sounds so silly, but like to be the biggest guy there or one of the like most muscular guys there, and for people to be like, what the hell? Like he's actually running quite fast for a big guy. And like I enjoy sort of like going against that stereotype, to scratch the ego and to kind of to do something that is difficult to do and a lot of people don't do because it's really hard. You don't see many people that are 90 or 100 kg running really fast marathons because it pays to be light. You don't see Tour de France cyclists being over 60, 65 kg because it pays to be light. So it's kind of trying to challenge myself to be like, you don't have to get down to that. You can still do a good job, maybe not as optimally as if you drop down to 60 or 70 kilos, but um yeah, kind of like to go against the grain a little bit.
Love it. Well, Paddy, I am very much looking forward to seeing your journey unfold, and I think it's an amazing achievement, like doing an Ironman. I really mean that, because having worked with people in the endurance space for quite some years, and actually, being able to go and watch things like ultra marathons, knowing what
Mm,
it takes to do it, not just the actual execution of the race, but all the training that goes into it as well, is amazing. Like, I would love to one day do something like that if my body would allow me.
yeah,
So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how that unfolds for your boy.
thanks,
Okay,
mate.
this has been a really good conversation. Knew it would be. But we do have a closing tradition on the podcast. And that question, my friend, is this: what is a quote or mantra that resonates with you right now?
So the obviously you pre-framed this to me beforehand. I listened to a very good podcast, and I don't know the name of the podcast. I think the podcast is called "Your Thoughts Shape Your Reality." That's what I've got titled in my book club notes on that we still do every week, by the way.
Love it.
Um, and I actually don't know. I can't remember. It was some doctor, but it was a really good podcast. It was recommended to me, and it was talking about just your identity and your personal values versus what you do every day. And I think it was a really perfectly timed podcast for what I was going through over the last couple of months, and creating or having clarity on my personal values and what's important to me and what fulfills me. And it's very simple, short. Your personal values are your actions. And I think it's similar to like you are what you repeatedly do. And I think that we can never our personal values are always evolving to a degree. And um, I think it's important to look at what you're doing in your day to day and asking yourself, hold on, does this align with me and what I want and what I deem as successful or what I deem as enjoyment and what fulfills me versus what I'm spending all my time doing? And if I'm spending all my time doing things that don't align with that, then I'm obviously I'm going to struggle to find fulfillment in my day to day. I'm going to struggle to be able to do things to the best of my ability because I'm swimming against the tide. So I think mm, continually asking myself, what am I spending my time doing, or how am I spending my time day to day, speaking to people, acting around people, and that gives me more clarity as to where I want to spend my time versus where I shouldn't be spending my time. And that's from a work environment, that's from a relationships perspective, um, et cetera, et cetera. So that it's a really a really good question that I asked myself and spent quite a bit of time chewing on. So yeah, hopefully anyone listening to that might spark them to think about where they're spending their time versus where they want to be spending their time.
Love it. Paddy, thank you very much. To close out, where can people find out more about you? How can they get involved with the things that you're doing?
Probably most active on Instagram. So Patrick_James_coach on Instagram. I do have a YouTube as well, but I haven't posted anything for a long time. And obviously, anything that is related to Marchon, I will have some form of a finger in a pie. So if you're ever in the UK and ever in London, come over to Marchon Victoria. I will gladly coach or have a chat or have a coffee with anyone that comes by. And then obviously, if you fancy following a bodybuilding program that's not the build program or the process programming, then you can join the gain program on Marchon Training.
Love it. Paddy, this has been epic. Always good catching up, my friend. And until next time.
Thanks, Ed.
Before we say goodbye, here's one crazy statistic for you. Did you know that almost 40% of people who listen to the show don't actually subscribe to it? Now, I didn't think that was a big deal until I actually learned about the power of hitting subscribe. For you, the listener, you get to stay up to date when we drop episodes on a weekly basis. But for us as a podcast, it really helps our visibility and helps us attract great brands and great listeners to help grow this podcast. So if you enjoyed this episode or you're a big fan of the show, please do us a massive favor and hit subscribe. Thank you so much.